Is all right. There we go. We are now recording.
Ooh.
Come on now. Give me a second here. All right, here we go. Back with another episode of the Dogman Files. We are back with a special guest tonight. His name is Joedy Cook of the North American Dogman Project, and we're really excited to have him on tonight. So we will not waste any time. Let's bring him on board.
Hey,
Well,
Joedy.
thank you for coming on with us tonight. It's an honor to have you on here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So I heard that you're trying to keep your head low up north, and have you been doing any research lately that you've been able to get outdoors, or has it been primarily?
Yeah, we've had a couple police officers in this area that's been seeing Dogman, and it's actually been in a certain general area. Okay.
Good.
And basically, one was on duty, and two were off duty, and they were in this, like I said, the same general area where they seen this Dogman take place. And they're interesting case. I can't get into a whole lot of them because they're still ongoing investigations. I'm working with them. One of them is kind of backing off because he went live on a podcast, a different podcast about it, and it kind of blew up in his face. His department basically told him to shut up, stop, leave it alone, and so he's kind of backing off on that. And his sighting was pretty good. It was probably one of the best because he was pretty darn close to it. The other two were both in their vehicle. Well, they all three were in the vehicles, but these were just basically where they just came right out. I mean, no fare of the vehicle, just crossing on two legs, crossing the road. So it was like no fare of the vehicles whatsoever. No fare that they were even there. Didn't even bother to even look at them whatsoever. Now, the third was the third deputy. This thing was perched on a guardrail like a bird. And cars are passing it. And it's just, it's just sitting there watching the vehicles, has no fare whatsoever, these vehicles. And then, he sees this thing, he slows down, it stops, gets on two legs and just walks off and looks right at them the whole time. I mean, they're really incredible, sightings. And then we have another area where there's a park that, we're getting Dogman and Bigfoot sightings in this one particular park. And the park has a lake. So at summertime, everybody's up there swimming at this huge lake. It's got a beach and everything. And, people see the thing comes out, certain parts of the lake when people are out on the boats and stuff, trying to catch fish and things like that. But it's getting to the point where the sightings of Dogman are growing and growing and growing, and the Bigfoot sightings are getting less and less in this area. Mm-hmm. Wow. And now there's sightings of what they believe is like a rake within the same area, and so forth. And then we have another area that we're looking at, which is a how can I say? It's like a small little creek goes over this little highway part road, and then you have the bridge, and then this thing's been jumping up over the bridge, crossing to going on the other side. And people, there have been 4 sightings of it. People are describing this thing as like a rake, a long, thin, white, creature with dark eyes, and it climbs over and it crosses over the traffic and goes right back onto the bridge. So we've been looking at that.
Gollum from Lord of the Rings.
It's weird. So there's a lot of stuff in Cincinnati that in the Cincinnati general area that's really heating up right now.
Well, I'm glad you're busy.
Oh yeah,
It's good.
yeah,
It's good to have work to do,
yeah,
and you know, I know that personally, I get excited whenever we have a new case file come in, or we get a hot tip or anything. You know, so you your group, you know, the
Mhm.
North American Dogman Project. You started that back in the day, and how
Yeah.
long has that group been a thing? How long have you guys been out there doing
10
work?
years. 10 years. We
Wow.
started in
Ooh,
2006, and we've been together for 10 years now. And
that's great.
yeah, we average about 5,000 views a month on our website. We just got voted in the top 100 websites.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Well, I've been to your website. I mean, it
yeah.
is a good looking website.
Yeah, we put a lot of time and money into that website. And here, the interesting thing is what I love about it is that our web our provider contacted us and said, "Listen, I don't know if what you guys are doing. We've been checking your site. We've been going through all your pictures, running your pictures through um, programs to see if there's any hidden pictures in there, type things. Something that is questionable." And we said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, the NSA, the CIA, FBI, Department of Defense, they named off a whole bunch of different agencies for different states. Um, there were the Canadian Department, the Defense Ministry was on there. Um, there was the Chinese um, Secret Service type. Their people was on it. The Russians were on it. The Saudis were on all kinds of stuff. And they're saying all these agencies are on your, looking at your site because
Hmm.
they're able to pick up their what do they call that IP address, and it goes back to government agencies.
Hmm.
So they said that was a concern. So
Yeah,
we
it's
had
like
to go.
you're a hub for terrorism or something there. Or they
No,
didn't know what was going on there.
no, it's because of our content, the stuff that we have.
Right.
Somebody has interest, in it. And my personal opinion, okay, I don't think these agencies are looking at us to see what we got. I think it's just maybe some employee, on his lunch break is on a government computer and he's just Googling stuff.
No.
You know what I'm
That's a
saying?
big
That's
coincidence.
yeah, that's my opinion. I mean, um, but until I've had two positive encounters with government agencies over my website, face to face over the
Mhm.
website, where they have actually came to me. And
Really?
they were positive. They were positive, you know.
Mm.
And this is why, when I hear, people talk about, government agency, they're threatening me. I'm sorry, I call bullshit on that. Okay. Because like I said, I've had two positive. I'll tell you what they were. Okay. The first one, I did a lecture. Okay. It was at a, you know, like one of these coffee houses, where they serve coffees and, people come in and they talk and all this other stuff. They drink coffee, tea, or whatever. And so I came and did a lecture on Dogman there, had a whole bunch of people there. And my wife was there, my brothers were there, I had friends that were there, and two guys come in with suits, very, very professional. They go and they sit in the back and they're writing stuff down as I give this lecture. Okay. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe they're newspaper people or something like that. And then they came up to me afterwards and they showed their IDs. They were NSA. And like I said, I have all these witnesses to back this up. And they said, your presentation was very informative. It was, you had some good stuff that you shared. And I made a joke. I'm not kidding. I made a joke. I say, if you like, I'll give you a copy of it. And this guy with a straight face says, you don't need to. We already have it. And that's exactly what he said. But he also said, don't be surprised if someone comes and asks you your opinion on something on this subject. And that's what he said. And that was it. About a year, little over a year goes by. Okay. I get a phone call and it's all zeros. It's all zeros. And I'm like, maybe it's spam or something. So I didn't answer it. Called right back again. Okay. So I'm like, oh, okay. I'll maybe, my wife calling from work or something like that. And, that's how it shows up. And so I answered, and it was this guy, he says he's agent so-and-so with the NSA. I have some information I want to talk to you about. Can we meet? I said, okay. But I said, I want to meet in a public setting. And he goes, fine, name the place and time. So I said, I can meet you, in 2 hours in this place here. If you're local, he goes, yes, I'm local. I can meet you there. So I'm at the restaurant and I'm by the window. So I'm able to see out. 2 black SUVs show up. 3 guys get out or talking. One guy, he has like a little briefcase type thing with him that he's holding on. He comes in, goes straight to me, doesn't even look for me, anything. He knows where I'm at, comes straight to me and sits down talking. Now, this guy was probably in his 30s, slick back hair, really groomed, nice, really nice suit, tie, all this other stuff. But the one thing I noticed on him is that he had a Mason ring on his pinky. Okay. Now, I'm a Mason. Okay. So one thing I can tell you with government agencies, you can't wear jewelry other than your wedding band. Okay, you can wear stuff on there where it's hidden, but you can't wear Mason rings. Government agencies, they're not allowed to do that. It's part of their protocol. You only jewelry, like it says, wedding bands, in your watch. So he's sitting there talking to me, and he pulls out maybe 8 or 10 pictures, okay, of a dead dog man. Okay, he goes, we didn't kill it. It was hit by a vehicle, and we got the body. Okay, so he showed me it's there on the ground where it got hit. You can see this thing had damage to it. I mean, it looked real. It did. The picture, you can saw part of the body was open where it got hit. You saw the damage and stuff. The paw were it was four paw fingers, but 3 were like longer, and it kind of like the one farther down so it kind of like had a thumb, okay, on the front paws. The bottom paws were strictly canine. The legs were canine. It had a massive, chest to it. The reproduction organs were like human. I mean, they were literally like a human. Okay. Yeah. And so it was male. So this thing was probably about 7 feet, maybe 300 pounds, if that. You had really close pictures of, like the ears, the eyes, the inside of the mouth, just different parts of the body. And he asked my opinion on it. What did I thought? So, I told him what I thought. I said, this is similar to what I seen in my sighting. The color's about the same and so forth. But there was one detail that I recognized that was in there that I mentioned a couple months earlier in a podcast, okay, where someone said, look, I shot a dog man in the chest, and it did nothing. But I noticed before I saw it, I heard popping sounds. Well, I said, well, this is my opinion. I believe the chest, where the sternum comes down, is this one massive bone that goes across the chest. Okay, a very thick piece of bone that's protective. That's why when people shoot it, it does nothing. That it protects it. Okay, it does have ribs, but they're a little bit further back. And I said the popping sounds that you hear is because it has an extra set of joints for when it goes from, a quadruped up to 2 legs. Okay, that's what the popping is when it moves, because it's going into those joints. Okay, so he shows me, the pictures of this dog man. And one thing I also said is that Dogman has 2 sets of canines in the front. They're together. Okay, and it has one on the bottom. Okay, so basically where it fits up like this. Okay. And I said they're the same size. Now, regular canines, they do have it, but it's smaller, where these 2 are much, much longer. Okay. And they're more of a hook, and they have I'm trying to best way to say it. Kind of like how a hyena is, where it has grooves on the back of the teeth for when it claps, for the ripping, where where the tooth hits like this and it's able to rip it because it's got grooves
Serrated?
in there. Yeah, like shredded on the back. Okay. And I said that I believe that's what Dogman, teeth are like. And I noticed that on the dead Dogman, that he had that 2 rows of, 2 upper canines and the one larger one where it locked in there. So he shows me a skeleton of one. And I mean, this thing looked real. I'm telling you, this thing will look real. And it was identical to the way I described it 2 months earlier on a podcast. It had the massive bone going across the chest, where it protected the organs. It had the 2 separate joints up on the arms and up in the hip area. The teeth and everything was just like, and it was identical to what I said, what was in this skeleton. Okay. Now these look real. Okay. Everything looked real. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, either someone's playing a trick on me and they've got money to do it, or this stuff is 100% real.
Was this what year was this? When did this go down?
Oh, this went down 3 years ago. Yeah, so it would have been.
I could see you thinking that maybe somebody was playing a trick on you, man.
I thought someone was playing a trick on me, but if it was somebody playing a trick on me, they had to put a lot of money to do it and a lot of time. Okay, to have someone pretend that they're a special agent, with the NSA, and then come up with a fake body and a skeleton and things like that. So when I got home, I sat there and I Googled movie props of werewolves, dead werewolves, skeletons of werewolves, just to see if there was something that was on the internet that these people could have got to do it. And I couldn't find anything, nothing whatsoever. I mean, it was a real short thing. He showed me the pictures on both of them, asked my opinions on it, and left. Didn't sit down and eat, didn't drink anything. It was real quick. In 20 minutes, it was gone. It was over in 20 minutes. That was it.
Did you any license plates or anything on the 2 black SUVs?
Well, they were white government plates. That's the thing. So I was able to see that. So they were white government plates. But see, here's the thing. The NSA they collect data. That's it. They're the friendliest of all the alphabet agencies. Okay. Because they don't do the stuff like the FBI and the CIA and Homeland Security and all that stuff does. Their job is to collect data. Okay. So my problem is why would the NSA have concern about something like this and not the FBI and not Homeland Security or the CIA? Okay. Because you think it would be more of a concern to them. Well, through research, and I talked with a retired federal agent about this, and he said, and he laughed, and he goes, listen, government agencies, if I'm CIA, okay, and I want to go talk to you, if I come to you as CIA or FBI, I'm going to make you nervous. But if I come to you as a lesser agency like the NSA or Department of Defense or something like that, it's not going to go as bad as it would if I showed up as this agency. So I can get a document, an ID from them anytime. And that's how they do it. So these guys probably weren't NSA. They were probably with another agency, because I do know for a fact these agencies do have interest in these creatures. Okay, I wrote the FBI on the Freedom of Information Act on Bigfoot. I got like 22 documents from them. Most of them were blacked out, but one file was completely gone. It was empty. It was serial number 5. They go in serial, like serial 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it goes up to like serial 10. But serial 5 was empty. Okay, so but the letter states that there's 2,000 classified documents that can't be released. So why does the FBI have 2,000 classified documents on Bigfoot? Well, it's simple. I asked them, okay, because they gave me a contact number, for the information if I had any questions. So I called the guy and I said, listen, could you explain to me why serial number 5 is missing? He goes, probably through sterilization of the files. Okay. And I said, well, under the Freedom of Information Act, there should have been, a couple documents that should have been in there that's not there. And they said, well, if they're not there, they were in serial number 5 and they got, sterilized. Okay. They got, okay. And I said, so why does you have 2,000 classified documents on Bigfoot? And he goes, well, it's very simple. You take a government property, okay, and there's agents that's out on government property for one reason or another, and they see a Bigfoot, or they see something that should not be there, and they put it in their report. Well, the report's classified because the report deals with something else other than what they saw. It's just they were thorough enough to put it in the report like they're trained to do. Okay. It's that type of stuff that where, or they're on an investigation and they seen them or they encountered them, something to that, because that investigation is still ongoing and that investigation is classified. Or the location where the sighting took place is classified.
Right. They don't have to close as long as the case is open. They don't have to give out that information.
They don't have to. Yeah, they can deem it classified, for whatever reason. So basically, that's why it's the FBI is not out looking for Bigfoot. That's not what they're doing. They're not out looking for Dogman or these other cryptids, but
they pop up.
But they pop up on their investigations. So, when you're dealing with Dogman, this is the apex predator. Okay. So they know this thing is taken life. Okay. We have autopsies that we've got from family members where they truly believe that it was Dogman related because these people have seen these things and then, they're just completely ripped apart. And you can read the autopsies on our website. And 2 of them, it was from the same doctor. And when you read it, you can see this doctor's having a really hard time justifying what he's trying to say because he can't say what he wants to say. You can tell he can't say what he wants to say, but the evidence is there that he presents that no normal dog or bear could have done to these bodies what was done to these bodies. Okay, they suspect, in one case, they suspected it was the 2 pit bulls from the neighbors. So they killed the 2 pit bulls and did the autopsy on the pit bulls and found no human DNA whatsoever in the body. So they knew it wasn't those dogs. So, it was done something else. The 3rd one we got actually has the diagrams of the body in there and what this thing did to this woman was sickening. Okay, the way it mutilated her body. And her family knows it was a dog man that did it. Because where they're at, there's sightings of this dog man there. And they know that's what did this thing. And they have a petition that they're asking people to sign. And it states right there, the federal government, the police is hiding the fact that my mother was killed by a dog man. And that petition's on our website also. And it states
in these two situations, do you have any idea what could have prompted these dog men to attack and kill people? Because we know that people have encounters with them all the time that are physically benign. Was there anything that you guys could find that was like a similarity between the two that might have caused them to kill?
Well, according to the autopsies, they weren't fed on, they weren't eaten on. Okay, so these were kills. Okay, so either the dog man was killing them as a warning to everybody else, or they got into a situation where it probably had no choice but to kill them. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. I do believe that Dogman is an apex predator, but I don't honestly believe he's going to just stalk and kill you unless it has a reason to, either for food or for fear. Okay.
Mm-hmm. There needs to be a motive of some sort.
Yeah, some type of a motive. Now, you take the LBL case where the family got massacred down there. People say, well, it was the perfume the wife wore, okay, which is ludicrous because Americans love to camp. Americans love to be outside. We know you wear perfume, it's going to attract bugs, okay? Yeah. And they're going to bother you the whole time, so you don't wear it. So that whole theory is just ignorant. I'm sorry. It's completely ignorant to even use that. The possibility of what happened at LBL was that this family was in an area where they should not have been there, and they were killed. Because like I said, again there, those bodies, from all the people that I've talked to who say they were there, never said the body was eaten on, except for the little girl that was in the tree. They said her body was eaten on.
So you believe that whole thing actually happened, right?
Well, here's the thing. It allegedly happened in 82. Okay. I heard about it in 1980. I'm trying to think, was it 85 or 87? I can't remember off the top of my head. And it was at I was at a police seminar at the time because I was deputy sheriff, and I was at a police seminar, and I met a couple of different officers that were there. We went out and had some drinks after the seminar, and we were just talking about different things. And then this one came up and said, we got this call about this family that got, killed by a werewolf and all this other stuff. And that's the first time I ever heard the story. But he never stated, and the whole time he stated about the mother, the father, and the daughter. He never said there was a son that was killed. Okay. So I started investigating, the land between the lakes then. I would go down there every chance I got to investigate, talk to people. I talked to different officers who said they were there. Every single officer never told me about a little boy. The first time I ever heard about a little boy was in early 2000 when Jan Thompson came forward with a story that the two officers told her. And that was the very first time I ever heard about the little boy being part of that. But every officer that I've spoken to who swore they were there only said it was the mother, the father, and the girl. So, but here's the thing. There's 5 people, okay, that has done investigating the LBL from the time it happened. Okay. It was myself, C.J. Johnson, who has passed away, Bart Nutley, Kimbo, and his friend Mike. Okay, we're the only 5 from the early 1980s. I'm talking within 2 years of the incident on up to today. We're the only ones. Okay, and not one of us has ever heard about a survivor or ever heard of either a little boy being there or a little boy not being there. So, is the story true? At this point today, I'm going to say that, in my personal opinion, something happened at LBL, but no one has the exact story, because I had 6 Kentucky officers that took me down to LBL and said, this is where it's. I was been taken to 2 different locations, okay, where the incident happened. Okay, they're real close to each other. Okay, don't get me wrong, they're real close to each other, but I can never get a honest view of what actually happened there. Same thing with all the other researchers. I honestly, at this point, like I said, I believe something happened, but I will not swear on the Bible that a family was killed at LBL, because
I've actually got a theory on that. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but there is a lot of discrepancy between different versions of the story.
Exactly.
It could be that maybe there was more than one family that was killed in 2 different time frames.
Exactly.
And who's to say that there wasn't more than one?
Yeah, exactly. And I support that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take a alleged survivor with this Roger guy, okay, I mean, I don't know if any of you remember who C.J. Johnson was.
Yes.
Okay. That guy was probably one of the best researchers out there when it came to Bigfoot and Dogman. If anybody knew that there was a survivor, it would have been him. And he has never, ever mentioned it in any of his research that he's done on LBL. None of his videos that him and his son has done. His son has been with him out in the field. His daughter, even them, they say they've never heard of a survivor. And the people that believe Roger are the people who've never been out to the field. Okay. They sit behind a computer, and that's where they do their research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually got a phone call from him a couple years back after I went to the LBL, and I did a little video on my trip out there, and I was kind of going over my theories about maybe there was more than one attack, and anyway, I kind of mentioned his story in the video, and he reached out to me. Seemed like a nice guy, but there's just too much going on with that story, and my name is Brian. I wasn't there, so I don't have any evidence one way or the other to point a finger on that. So, Coleman, you had a question earlier. What was it?
I was just going to ask you, Joedy, since we're on the topic, you brought up earlier about these attacks and these families that have suspicions that something cryptid related. You kind of briefly touched on it, but is there certain characteristics that you look for in those type of reports of these, these supposed animal attacks or dog, what they're labeled as dog attacks? Are there certain things that you look for that tells you that other researchers could look for to tell them this could be something possibly cryptid or dogman related?
See, we're
heck.
Right. The only animal, I mean, if there's government involvement, okay, in covering up Bigfoot, okay, how would they cover up Dogman attacks, okay, in like non-rural areas or non-city areas, but areas that are out where there's not a lot of population. Well, very easy, bear attacks, okay, is one of the biggest, because they're not going to tell the difference. So I wrote the Department of Agriculture. I said I would like, under the Freedom of Information Act, a complete map of every single bear attack in the United States. Okay. They sent me a letter back saying, yeah, okay, no problem. It takes X amount of time and all this other stuff, And then, I'm not kidding you. I swear I'm not kidding you. I was on a podcast and someone asked me the same thing. And I said, look, this is what North American Dogman Project is doing. We're taking a map that we're getting from the federal government of bear attacks, and we're going to look at all these different attacks and see if they match up to the areas where bear attacks was. And I'm not kidding. Within a week later, I get a letter from the Department of Agriculture denying that the map exists of bear attacks. I'm not kidding. Not even a week after I did that podcast. So were they monitoring me? I don't know. Was it, coincident? It could be. But for them to sit there and say that they're not documenting bear attacks and locations and stuff is a lie. Because they're documenting puma locations and attacks across the country. So they have to be doing it with bear. And they're doing it with bobcat. So they have to be doing it with bear. So I wrote them again and saying, listen, you can't deny me this under the Freedom of Information Act. You can sit there and say all you want, you don't have it. But and this is where I gave examples where I showed you're doing it with bobcat, you're doing it with mountain lion and pumas. So you have to be doing it with bear. And I've not heard anything from them since. And it's been a year and a half.
I've never gotten a decent response with either of the Freedom of Information Act requests I put out.
State of Ohio. Yeah. I wrote them under Freedom of Information Act and sat there and told them that, I want all their stuff on Dogman, werewolves, whatever. I gave them a whole list of different names so they couldn't say they didn't have it. And they sent me a letter back denying me it. And I said, you can't deny me something under the Freedom of Information Act unless it's labeled classified. And you in the state of Ohio should not have anything classified when it comes to animals. Again, they don't care. Their thing is, what are you going to do? You're going to sue us? Go ahead and sue us. Take us to court. See how long it takes you to lose money, because they can, they can run with it. They've got the money to do it. And they know it.
They can close. They can leave a case open, so they do not have to respond to your requests.
No,
But I do have an acquaintance, a friend of mine, who used to work for a municipality, and part of her job was responding to Freedom of Information Act requests. And she suggested to me that instead of, because all they got to do is just leave a case open and they never have to address it.
Yeah.
And I've actually been told that sometimes family members can be denied a coroner's report if the case is still open.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And but she suggested that if you know that something happened around a specific time frame, ask for what they call a call for service, which is basically a list of all the police dispatch incoming calls. And sometimes you can get some information there, and possibly even confirmation that something did happen. Because sometimes, when we get these reports, we don't know if people are full of crap or not.
We talk with a lot of people in law enforcement and the military and stuff, and the law enforcement, they're really good. I mean, these are guys at different parts of the country, and they're like, well, call sign for Bigfoot is black cow. Dogman, it's black dog. I mean, this is something that's nationwide law enforcement, because they, if they get a Bigfoot sighting or something like that and it's called in and they do it over the radio because they know the media and other people are listening to the transmissions, they'll say, okay, you had a black cow report up here, you had a black dog report here. So the police officers know that's what these are.
All right.
Well,
that's pretty cool. So if you're looking for ways to kind of find out, we're looking for supposed bear attacks, reported bear attacks down south. We'd probably be looking at, dog attacks. They would report them because we don't have the bears. And so down here, that it kind of comes across like that. But you really don't have any clue about what the determining factor is whenever these things attack and kill somebody. It's kind of a mystery, Well, as far as I'm concerned,
like the autopsy reports, though, like, is there anything like those type of details? If you were to look at an autopsy report, what's that would just come at you like that's dogman attack, like that's that's something that is unique for those type of cases. Is there anything like that?
Oh yeah, there's like scratch marks on the body where we're so deep and so long that a domestic dog couldn't have done it. It's like where this thing, like the one woman's head, where this thing bit on her head and basically pulled the skin right off on the head. Because of the bite mark on the head, I mean, her head had to literally be inside the animal's mouth.
Oh, wow.
Okay. It wouldn't have been like a normal dog. I mean, you would have to look at the autopsy report to understand what I'm saying. It's just, it did some damage. And this was the thing. It's just the claw marks, that were on the bodies. One of the bodies, where it was, for a minute there, you thought maybe it was a big cat because the skin was literally like licked off of the body. And the only animal that licks the skin off are like lions, African lions, and your Bengal tigers or your Siberian tigers and stuff like that. Those are the big cats that lick the skins off of their prey, like humans. Okay. And this is what it did on one of the bodies. It was able to do that. So that was kind of concerning for a minute there until you read the report. It wasn't a cat because of the bite radiuses was more canine, and it states it, they were canine, not cat or anything. And plus, you had the other markings on the body that was done to, that was canine in nature. And that's why the one gentleman, that's why they went and killed the dogs next door, because they said, oh, this was a dog that did it. So they killed the two dogs. I mean, they just went and took the dogs and killed them. They didn't even tell the freaking owner. They just went and took the dogs and killed them, and did the autopsies and found, well, no human flesh or DNA or anything was, in these dogs' bodies. And they were pretty big bulls. So
have there ever been any situation where, with the bodies that were recovered or anything, that there was any kind of physical evidence, biological evidence left over from the actual creature itself?
Well, see, that's the thing. You would think that there was DNA work that was done, but it's not mentioned in, how can I say this? It was mentioned like one time in the autopsy report, where it shows, it's canine. Okay. Because it goes with the bite marks, and that was it. It doesn't go into detail about what type of DNA. Okay. It's like we have DNA that we had. Okay. And this really pissed me off. Okay. I did this show called Mysteries Decoded. Okay. And the woman that does it was a naval intelligence officer. Okay. So we did a thing about Dogman, and I had a really beautiful cast, Dogman cast, and I had hair samples. Okay. So the hair samples came back as an unknown species of canine that was not known. And that was in the report. Okay. I mean, I even talked to the lab that did it. Okay. And I said, well, can I have a copy of the report? Okay. And they said, yeah, we'll go ahead and send a copy of the report when we send the remaining hair back. Well, a few weeks go by, I'm calling to find out, no one's calling me back. And it's God as my witness. They sent my hair back in a sandwich bag that still had crumbs from the sandwich. So they purposely contaminated the hair samples that they sent back. Okay. And did not send me the copy of the report. And then when I finally got a hold of them, they denied having it. But here's the thing. When we called them, everybody from the show was right there. Okay. Where they sat there and said, yeah, man, this hair, I mean, it's of an unknown species of canine, which is odd because it doesn't match up to anything that exists today.
And
it's like,
what did the hair look like?
Huh?
Just out of curiosity, what did the hair look like?
Very, very coarse hair. Very long. It was probably about, maybe about this long here and stuff. Some of it still had flesh on it because there was a fence. We got it off a fence. I mean, this was a 5.5 foot fence that was all barbed wire. Okay. And it was to keep people from going into this guy's property. And this thing kept coming over and over, and it was getting caught over on the barbed wire. So we got a lot of freaking evidence that was on this barbed wire.
What color was it?
It was black and it was brown, real light brownish color. And I mean, we even had pieces that had like flesh, to it and stuff. And that's the stuff we sent. I still have a lot of the hair left, but I sent them a black and a brown set that we know we had that had flesh on it. And that's where, they sending it back. I swear to God, in a sandwich baggie where it still had crumbs from the sandwich in there, where they deliberately, contaminated hair. Because you don't put hair in plastic, okay? Because it's petroleum. It's going to contaminate it. That's why
it becomes a terranium too. It just
Yeah. And you have to put it in paper, some type of paper. But it's just I was really pissed. And I sat there and I told Mysteries Decoded, because they wanted to do another follow-up, and I was like, no, this is crazy. And they broke the cast. They broke it into like 4 pieces, when they sent it back to me. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Jeez.
So, I mean, they literally, the people who they sent the stuff out to do the testing and to look at the stuff, deliberately destroyed it. Both pieces of evidence.
Well, that kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Speaking of the hair sample, the reason why I was smiling so much when you were describing it is because we've actually got some hair samples that we believe came from a dogman, and you described it to a T. And when we get done, I'll send you some images of what it looks like. And I've actually got some microscopic pictures of it. That's one of my new hobbies. And basically, we've been trying to find matches to it, to kind of prove to establish a pattern. Not that I expect all dogman hair to look the same.
Right.
That would be foolish. But I
can send you pictures of the stuff that we've got and let you take a look at it.
I'm very interested.
We've got a claw there was a tree where it was, and this was in Texas, where it was scratched. Okay. And there was a part of a fingernail that was stuck in there. And this guy's been seeing this thing, watch his cows. And he saw it by the tree where it had the, scratch marks. And we got the picture and everything, but we've got the claw. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I took it to my vet and he looked at it and he goes, yeah, it's canine. And he goes, when he put it under the microscope, he said, yeah, you can look at and see the, what the heck do you call that? The fungus that dogs get, in their nails. And he goes, you can see it. Here it is. But we haven't had the nail tested for, tested DNA. And, the vet said, you probably can, but you're probably not going to get anything out of it. It's not like a tooth or, a really good piece of hair or a piece of skin, because the nail has touched so much stuff.
Right.
You may get DNA from a different animal on there,
right.
or, because it might've stepped in some type of feces and you're going to get the DNA for that. I mean, he said, that's the problem you're going to have with this, unless you go to some place that has, where they can really do the in-depth on there. But he said, it's going to be expensive,
right.
So,
well,
but we're going to try.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
No, you go.
Sorry. I don't want to veer off course too much because I know we're talking about, DNA and everything, but Joedy, I want to ask you, I asked this question to every researcher we've had on the show so far, because I know for us, what we're trying to do is, I know Brian has said this before, and I think it's very true, is, maybe you agree, Dogman research is so far behind Sasquatch research, we feel like, as much as of a mystery that is, I think we can be fairly confident in certain things we can say about, Sasquatch activity, behavior patterns, things like that. And so what we're trying to establish that with Dogman, hopefully. So with, your research and the time and energy you put into this field, what are the things that you look for? Are there anything characteristics that you look for where if you're looking at a potential hot spot or you're trying to, find an area to research at, or if you're at an area and you're getting activity, is there certain things that are unique for Dogman? Like with Bigfoot, for example, you expect the vocalizations, the wood knocks,
right.
whatever else, the rock throwing, is there things like that for a Dogman phenomena? Is there certain things you listen for? Is there certain things you look for that they do that's something where if you hear it or see it, you can almost conclusively, as much as you can with, confidence, say, like, that's what I'm looking for. Like, that tells me they're in this area and they're here. Or is there anything?
The biggest thing that we look for is scratch marks on trees. Okay. Because that is a very big trait Dogman does to say, this is my territory, when it comes to marking. That is probably one of the biggest things. We look at the food source in the area too, has a lot to do with that. We look at the water source, that has a lot to do with it. Of course, it's because, the witnesses, what they have, but any type of like a physical evidence. See, people don't realize you're dealing, Dogman's like a wolf. It's like a coyote. Okay. So it's not going to stay above ground. Okay. It's going to den just like a wolf and just like a coyote would. And when people go out looking, they're looking for nests. Okay. Which is not what a Dogman's going to do. He's going to dig a den in the ground. That's what you need to be looking for, is some type of opening in the ground that's next to, rocks, a hillside or something to that effect, a water source or something where it's not too close to the water because of flooding. But that is what you need to look for. You got to look down And that's one of the biggest thing that I think a lot of dogman researchers fail to look at. They think that, you know, these things are making, you know, some type of nest, or they're living up in the tree, because there's a lot of sightings of these things up in trees. Okay. But you have to look at the fact that, you know, they're a predator dog like a wolf and like a coyote, and they're going to den. And that's where they're going to be protected. And that's what you need to look for. So those are the main things that we look for in the area.
Now, are they coming, in your experience, do they ever come to camp and you know, observe you? Do they, you know, because that's the thing with Sasquatch, you know, people say they'll come to camp, they'll get curious, they'll maybe throw rocks or food. Is that just a type of activity?
They'll watch you. I've never had a sighting where a dog man has thrown something. He has always made growls or some type of communication with another dog man, like through a howl or something to that effect. But they're mostly observing you. Okay. And when you look at all these other videos that are out there where people have dogman encounters, they're watching them. They're not doing anything else other than watching them. Now, when we were at LBL one year, that we had a meat bait set up in an area. And what was so neat about this area, when you walked in where we set it, there was like spider webs all over the place, and these freaking like brown spiders, big brown spider. I'm not kidding. When we walked out, it was like Indiana Jones, man. You're doing this stuff, you know. So we picked that particular area because we know once we got out, the spiders would have made the web. Okay, so if something was coming in, it would have knocked the webs down when we came in to look at the bait. Nothing touched the bait whatsoever. Okay, but we knew something was in the area because we smelt it. So we knew it was in the camp area. And that's part of a lot of the thing too. People don't see it, they'll smell it. Now, dogman smells a lot different from a Bigfoot. Dogman, this smell is, yeah, it's like a wet dog, but it's also like a dead smell. You know, that's the biggest, you know, to the point where it's going to make you gag and throw up, because, like, you know, when you're walking, you see a dead deer, or you drive by a dead deer and that smell hits you. That's what dogman is. You know, I saw Bigfoot when I was in the Army on a U.S. military base, and I had 3 other guys with me. I didn't smell anything, and I was like 12, maybe 15 feet away from them, and there was like no smell whatsoever. But the dogman sighting that we had, you smelled it. You knew it was there, because the deer that he snatched got the smell first before we did, because it was there. It was on the other side of the bush where the deer was. The deer looked at us. The deer looked over where the smell came from, and it leaped. And this thing, you saw the head, you saw the snout, the high pointed ears, and you saw this massive arm just grab this deer, you know, just grabbed it and walked off. And you just heard this horrible scream coming from this deer. And it just stopped. And that was at Daniel Boone National Forest. And that place is full of dogmen down there. I mean, it's a wicked, wicked place. I mean, it's more wicked than LBO is.
If I was gonna make a statement, you know, a lot of times whenever people report these smells, these horrible smells, a lot of times they never actually make eye contact with the creature.
Right.
What would you think if I was to make a hypothesis that when people smell these things, that perhaps the lion's share of that might be an unseen dogman instead of a Sasquatch?
You know, my thing is, what I tell people is, you know, dogs, you know, if you stare a dog in the eye, okay, that's a challenge to that dog. Okay, even if you have your pet, if you stare at your pet dog, your dog's gonna for a while there, it's gonna jump because even though they think you might be playing or something like that, it's still a challenge to that dog. So I tell people, if you see it, don't always look into the eye, keep it in your view, but don't look it into the eye because you're challenging it. When it comes to like Bigfoot, I think that's totally different because Bigfoot, every single Bigfoot sighting, okay, you see the Bigfoot by accident, okay, and that's how it is, by accident, okay. He's just you're not going to be walking on the trail and he's just going to come out on that trail and look at you and then move back in, okay, because if you hunt or if you're out in the woods a lot, one thing you need to is that animals blend into the environment. That's why you can walk right up on a rabbit or a squirrel, and then it moves and you jump because you see it, but it was there the whole time you walked up to it. Okay. Same thing with like a deer. A deer could be right there and you're driving down the road and you don't see it until it's right there, because it's blending into the environment. It's the same thing with Bigfoot and Dogman. I think they blend into the environment, and you'll get that before you get the smell. Some people always say, they get the smell first, and it depends if you're upwind or downwind. I think that has a lot to do with it, but you're always going to get that visual, I think, first before you get the smell.
Now, what do you think the relationship is? I know there's a lot of debate on that with Sasquatch and Dogman.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I feel like, that would be such a huge competition over resources for two large, my understanding, they'd probably need a lot of calories,
Mm-hmm.
two large, like I think you were saying apex predators type situation. Right. Eating over resources like that. I feel like it'd be one or the other in an area. Maybe I'm wrong, but what are your thoughts on that? What is it, based off of your research, is there some type of relationship there? Is there some type of connection?
I don't think there's a connection. I don't think there's a relationship. Okay. Because, like you said, these things are going to spend every single waking moment looking for food. They have to. Okay. They're going to find food. They're going to eat it. They're going to sleep, get back up and do it. Okay. I mean, when Finding Bigfoot was on, I would literally laugh when they would say Bigfoot would sleep all night and then go look for food. No, it doesn't work that way. I mean, we're human, okay? We get hungry throughout the day. Eric's been eating throughout the whole show, okay? And stuff. But the thing of it is, he has a pantry and a refrigerator that he can just get up and go to at any time. These animals don't. Okay. So they're going to spend every waking moment looking for food. They're not going to have time to cover their tracks. They're not going to have time to be worrying about what's else in their environment other than the other predators, when they're sleeping in a certain area. They're going to constantly look for food because they have to have that calorie intake to sustain to survive. Okay. So when you're in an environment where you have two predators like a Bigfoot and a Dogman's going to win always, okay? Because he'll kill and eat the Bigfoot. The Bigfoot's not going to kill and eat the Dogman, okay? We did this one investigation in Utah, which was real close to the Skinwalker Ranch. This woman lives in an area, and there's like 5 houses kind of spread out in this area. They all have livestock, right? So there's a Bigfoot that lives there. Everybody knew about it. It never bothered anybody. They would hear it. They would see it. Never bothered any of the animals whatsoever. Okay. They would leave food for it sometimes. It never screwed with anybody until one day animals start coming up missing. Pets are coming up missing, and they don't know if it's this Bigfoot. So they start seeing this other predator, a large wolf that's walking on 2 legs in the area. Well, one night, right at dusk, because how these houses are all set up, there's the wood line that's like off to the left. All the houses are off here, off to the right, okay? And they're hearing these ungodly screams of two different animals fighting in the woods. Okay, they said it was loud. It was so it was echoing. After that fight, they've never seen the Bigfoot again. Never seen it. Okay, they've been seeing this Bigfoot for 6 years. After that night, they never saw it again. Until this day, they still have never seen it. But they've seen this dog man. So this dog man, what this dog man is brave enough, it's coming up to the people's houses and looking in their house. It's attacking their horses. Okay, the one lady has showed us a picture of this horse where it went frontal attacking this horse, and it bit the chest of the horse right here. I mean, it was a nasty wound. And then 5 claw marks going down the back part of the horse's leg in the back. So this thing's trying to attack the horses, and it's just going on to all these different areas. So, we're investigating this whole thing out there. This thing would take like fawns and like throw them in people's driveways, dead deers. Just throw them in people's driveways, I guess, as a warning. This thing was very clever. We have pictures of trees where this thing marked trees around all these people's houses.
Wow.
We have pictures of where this thing put their handprint, facial print on the house where it's looking in. The daughter was in her bedroom, and she heard the horses corrals like right out by her back, where her bedroom is. And the light popped on, and she, opens the windows to look out. And she said there was a wolf doing this is the way she described it. And we have the drawing, crawling like an army man, going towards the, where the horses are. And she tells her dad goes out there with the gun, and it leaves. Now, here's the funny part about this. The mother and the father are like pro animal people. Okay. I mean, they go rescue animals. They want you dead if you hurt an animal or something. I'm not kidding. They bought a freaking gun because of this thing.
Wow.
Okay. This is how their whole mentality on save animals changed because of this creature. And everybody in this whole area has done the same thing. I mean, it's a weird situation, that is taking place. So these things they're smart. They're problem solvers. They're more intelligent than what we believe they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting too how, like you were just saying, like, they have this need obviously for calories.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're doing things, and I've heard similar stuff to that, where like you're talking about the fawns, like just killing an animal and just leaving it on someone's property or someone's porch or something, like just a food source right there, but they would rather intimidate or
exactly
they're doing it. It's very odd.
Yeah. And the thing of it is, she buried it. Okay. And it dug it up and threw it back in her driveway. I mean, this is how intelligent this thing is, and she's the closest to the woods of all the houses. So she was harassed more, but she ended up moving. She says, I'm leaving. And like the people who bought the house, she told them, see, because I'm telling you exactly, this is what's going on here. So if you still want to buy this house, and they still bought the house, but she got out of there. She says, I'm not putting up with that. I'm not gonna, be home sitting one night, and this thing gets into the house because I'm sitting there watching TV and I hear something trying to jiggle the door open.
They do that.
Yeah, they're smart enough to do that.
Yeah. Have you how around here where we're from, it seems like there's a pattern that they'll come into an area and they'll work an area for a while and then they'll leave. And a lot of times they're not even in the area for a week. Is their behavior different up there from what you've seen?
It's like what we did, we kind of compared Dogman to Bigfoot. Okay. And one thing we noticed, like when it comes to Bigfoot, east of the Rockies, okay, he's more violent, but he's smaller, meaning that he's more around 6-7 feet. Okay. The further west you go from the Rockies, the bigger they get, but yet the more docile that they get. Meaning that you take like California and the Pacific Northwest, the Bigfoots out there, they're not violent. There's no really big record of any of them being violent out there compared to like what's in Idaho when you get into Montana and so forth. Then you start getting where you're getting reports of these things are violent when it comes for throwing sticks, throwing rocks, making, bluffs and things like that. But like I said, east of the Rockies, they're like extremely freaking violent up there. And it's the same thing with Dogman. When you take from Michigan going all the way down to Kentucky and Tennessee, and then shooting all the way from Virginia, going all the way up to New York State, this is where the majority of the Dogman in the country are. And this is where they're more violent. And this is where you're getting a lot of the aggression taken from. Then you go down to Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas area. That's the second most populated area where sightings are taking place. And they're not as violent there as they are in the Northeast. And then the third part is the Four Corners. And there, you're dealing with a whole different type of Dogman, because that's all like supernatural and spiritual type that you're dealing in that area. I mean, we've got reports. I've had 3 separate, let me rephrase that. 2 separate reports in a 3-year period where people were at cemeteries, okay? And they seen dog-headed men wearing cloaks walking around the cemeteries, okay? Which is weird.
Clothing.
A cloak, a hooded cloak, okay?
Wow.
Walking around the cemetery, and all the cloaks were gray, okay? So I'm thinking, well, maybe these might be hellhounds, okay? I mean, hear me out here, okay? What is the hellhound? The hellhound is the dog that protects the souls that are in a cemetery from the demons coming down and taking them, okay? And are these hellhounds, or are these, something that's protecting the souls in the cemetery, and their dog, an ancient tribe that's here in the United States that, doing this or something like that? Who knows? But it's just, they're really weird that, in 2 different locations within a 3-year span, you get these reports. And then we just got another report not too long ago where a woman saw the same thing. And this was, less than 6 months ago. She, in the state she was in the cemetery, and she saw a cloaked, dog-headed person watching her.
Like during the daytime?
Yeah. Yeah. These are all daytime when people's visiting the cemetery.
Well, nowadays you have what's called furries. So
yeah, well, see, yeah, I no, that's true, and I kind of thought that, okay, but the similarities between them are pretty much the same, okay.
Yeah.
So then you have to go back thinking, well, is there an organization of people that's doing this? Okay, going in cemeteries, wearing cloaks, wearing dog heads, walking around cemeteries. If it was, then you would get more sightings, and you would get more reports, and you would be hearing about that stuff on the media.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's any, throughout your time researching Dogman, you briefly kind of touched on it, I mean, do you think there's any paranormal aspect to these things, whatever they are, or do you take like a strictly like they're flesh and blood, purely natural, or do you think there is some type of paranormal aspect to it? Is that something?
Oh yeah, there's definitely something paranormal, supernatural to it. We categorize our reports into 3. Okay, flesh and blood, supernatural, and extraterrestrial. Okay, because we have had reports, all the extraterrestrial stuff, reports that we've got have always came from people that were in the military. Okay, talked about, some type of dog-headed alien that they had an encounter with. Okay, I had two. Okay, Linda Goffrey even talked to a guy that gave her the same story, because we talked about this. Linda Goffrey and I did that. There was a guy that was part of a military group, and what they're former special forces and SEALs and all this other stuff. They recover down craft. That's their job. That's what they do. Whenever there's a down craft somewhere, the government sends them, they go and they recover it. If they're bodies, they recover it. And he said, now I met this guy. I was speaking at a paranormal conference one year, and it had a restaurant there. So everybody's in the restaurant there. I go up to the bar and I get something to drink. And the guy was asking there, what's all these people here? What's going on? I told him it was a paranormal. And he goes, oh, you a ghost chaser and stuff? I'm like, no, I do Dogman and Bigfoot research. I do cryptids, but mostly I do the Dogman stuff. And he goes, Dogman, what's that? And I said, it's like a werewolf type creature that people are seeing. And this guy was military, because he had, tattoos that were military tattoos and stuff. And you can tell, if you've been in the military and you talk to someone in the military, you can tell they were in the military just by the way they keep their self groomed, by the way they talk, and so forth. So they're military. And we were sitting there talking, and we were just talking about different things, and then about Dogman and stuff. And he goes, listen, I'm gonna tell you something. You can believe me or not. He goes, this is what I do. Okay, I recover down alien crafts. Okay. He goes, in 1972, 1973, the United States got in contact with an alien species that was canine in nature. Okay. And it's very aggressive species. Okay. We've never encountered anything like this type of alien before. Okay. Looks like a werewolf. Okay. So he said these things were so dangerous. They have, the ones they got in the early 70s are dead. They had to end up killing them, but they end up getting another down craft. Okay. So they were so dangerous, they wouldn't keep them in the United States. They kept them in a military base in Honduras. Okay. They end up getting out. Okay. They went into a village, killed a bunch of people there. They were able to recover their weapons and their armor, and was able to get out. He didn't go into detail how they were able to do that, but he said they wore armor. Okay. Kind of like a halo type suit, but no helmet, no gloves, no feet. It was just like a body armor that they used to protect themselves. And they had to go and they kill them. And he said, we had special weapons, we had that were made to kill these, these creatures with. And he said, they make this God unleashed scream when you killed them. Okay. So I thought that was kind of weird. I'm like, wow, that's kind of neat. But then I started doing a little bit of research, because I'm remembering something that I got this book at home on Star Wars. Okay. And I noticed that when they did this book and they talk about all these different alien species that are in Star Wars, there's a werewolf species that wears body armor, that has no hood, no feet or anything like that. And it has like this drawing of it. And it's one of the werewolves that's in the bar scene. But this one looked more like a dog. Now, so I did some research on Star Wars. Well, Lucas was a Mason also. Okay. Everybody that ran NASA are Masons. Okay. So Lucas was able to see stuff that people who had security clearances in NASA wasn't able to see. Okay. That's where he got a lot of the stuff from Star Wars. Okay. Now, Jim Baker, the guy that did the most of the costumes there, he was told by Lucas to do these werewolves and the bar scene. So these masks were not extras. They just from some store that they threw in there. These were specifically made by, Baker, the guy that did Harry and Henderson's outfit, to do these werewolves masks. So how would Lucas know about these werewolves? Okay. Unless someone from NASA said something to him. Okay. So you guys know who Richard Hoagland is?
Nope.
Okay. He's a UFO guy. You got to get this book called Dark Mission. And it's about NASA, how the Masons run NASA and all this other stuff. But he has some really good classified, unclassified photographs on there. And one of the pictures that he has in that book is an alleged crash on the moon. And there's a robot laying there that's all broken up. And it's CP30. I swear to God. It's a color picture. If you Google right now, Dark Mission robot head, you'll see it on there. It's a color picture. It's CP30's head. I kid you not. So how Lucas had to see all this stuff. And this is where, everybody was always saying there's stuff that's in Star Wars that, people on the moon landing actually talked about. It's like for the longest time, there was a picture of a ship that looked like the Millennium Falcon that was sitting inside a crater on the moon. Okay. That picture is scrubbed. You can't even find that picture anymore on the internet. So, I mean, it's just some really weird stuff, so that kind of, to me, that kind of proves that werewolf alien species did exist, because why would he have it in there if it didn't?
So are you thinking these are all strictly extraterrestrial type phenomena, or do you think it's sort of a mixed bag? Do you think with Dogman there's multiple things going on?
I think there's multiple things. I think this is a flesh and blood creature that has always been here. Okay. But yeah, I also think that if there is an extraterrestrial species canine, if they come to the planet, they can mate with domestic wolf, and you may get some type of a breed of a dogman that way. And those may be your aggressive ones. Those are your predator ones. Maybe it's too hard saying, are they interdimensional? Because we've got reports where people would see like portals open and these things would come out. We've got reports where people actually said they had telepathy conversations with these animals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we take all this stuff serious. I mean, we don't sit there and say, oh, that's horse. No, you have to look at every single aspect, even though how ridiculous it is. Okay. Even though you get more than one, you still have to look at it. There's different aspects to different things here. It's the same thing with Bigfoot. You got Bigfoot coming through portals and things like that,
Right.
Yeah. You're right. You really can't completely dismiss anything.
You can't dismiss it. Yeah. No.
Because I mean, when I was kind of more narrow-minded at a higher level in years gone by, and I would hear that some of these stories that I thought were odd, and but then eventually, you start hearing some of the same similarities over and over and over again over a period of years, and next thing you know, you've got a pattern, and so you kind of end up eating a little crow, and it's kind of a lesson learned. So
yeah.
Well, we've kind of had you on here a while, but I do want to talk about one thing before we let you go.
Sure.
you know, when it comes to evidence and the footprints and stuff, I sent you some pictures of that weird print that we got from a fella down in southeastern Oklahoma, the one that kind of had like the humanoid looking footprint with the claws, and it had what I at first I thought was a coyote print, and I sent that to you, and you were the one that actually picked out the fact that the smaller print on the inside of that print was three-toed. I don't know
Yeah.
if you remember that.
Yeah, I
It's been a
remember
while
that.
back.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a while back on that one. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that kind of to me, from what I've seen, you start digging around on the internet, and there's a lot of different things that pass for dogman prints.
Yeah.
And the way I'm seeing it, there's at least 3, maybe 4 types of credible prints
Mhm.
that are kind of out there, and it does make sense. If their hands are more like a raccoon's hands, like I always
Mhm.
tell people, their front prints are going to be different. But
It
what do you think is is a standard is there a standard that you guys go
Well,
by?
here's the thing. I'll send you a picture here of a paw print and a footprint from the same area. Okay.
Mhm.
Where these people saw this dog man chase a deer and it ran right out in front of them, and this
Mhm.
was in a local park, which is across the street from my house. Okay. which is really weird. And there's a whole big story behind that. But I went over there and got the paw prints and the handprint. I mean, it has the thumb and it has the 3 fingers. And like I said, you can see the difference between the two. I got them side by side. These are pretty big. Now, here's the thing too. When it comes to print, they're going to be canine print, okay? But we've been getting a lot of 3-toed prints, and we've been getting a lot of 4-toed prints, which is normal. Then you get some 6 prints, okay, which could be 2 tracks going over each other, okay? But those are coming out of Wisconsin, the
Mhm.
Bray Row area, okay? And that's normal for the dogmen up there that have, 5 or 6 digits on the prints that are coming out of there, okay? Ohio, we're getting in the northern part of Ohio, we're getting a lot of their just 3-toed prints, which is really unusual. So that means that the 4th toe has to be up higher where it's not down on the ground with the rest of them, or some type of deformity. But if it's some type of deformity, it's going on with a whole bunch of them, because these are different parts, not just Ohio, but even in Kentucky and Indiana area, and even going further out west where you're getting these 3-toed prints. So,
Well,
but you have to understand too, we have a print, okay, that looks like a bear print. Okay. It's very wide. It's got very long claws and it's 4-toed. Okay. And the toes go across like a bear. Okay. Now, the only problem with this is the size of the print. Okay. And if it was a bear, I mean, I've got it sitting next to a black bear print that I got here in Ohio, and the black bear was about 250 pounds. And this is a black bear print, so it's completely different. If this was a bear print, like say a grizzly bear, okay, which are not in the state of Ohio, okay, not even in this far east, you're not going to find a bear that big, okay. It the the DNR actually looked at the the print and said it's a bear print, okay. The only problem with the bear print is that this thing would be about 1,000 pounds, and we would know about it.
oh,
And that's what they said. Okay. Um, Now, if you have an animal that's 500, 600, 700 pounds, okay, the paw is going to be wider to support the weight. The legs are going to be fatter to support the weight if it's up on all fours. Okay. So, yeah, the pad is going to be much wider and not so narrow like a domestic dog or a wolf paw would be. Okay. So that means you got the two paws, 2 digits up front and the 2 on the side. Okay. So these 2 on the back on the side would have to move up to where it's up on the front, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4 with a much fatter pad. Okay. To support weight of something 500 pounds or more. Okay. So if this was a bear print, okay, it's a beautiful print, and when you look at it, that's what you're going to say. But the only problem is where it was located in Ohio was in an area where we're having all kinds of dogman sightings at, where this thing was able to take a cow, okay, from the farm, go down 5.5 feet into the ravine, the small little river there, and go 5.5 feet back up the ridge and kill that cow. So it had to carry that cow all that distance just to get over to the other side through rushing water. Okay, because there was no other way that cow would have got into the area where we found the remains, where this thing was eaten on. Okay, and then we have the print. Okay, and it was raining, and the print's there with water that's in the print. And also, I'll send you a picture of that print too to show you what I'm talking about. And the claws are about 6 inches, about 6 inches long.
Any pictures you send me, I'll drop them in so that the viewers can see those.
Yeah. And then we didn't talk about LBL too much, but you saw the pictures of the dog man holding the baby, right, on the website?
Yeah, I didn't think that was legit, really. Is it?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we have the video. Those are stills from the video. Yeah, the video.
Oh, you're talking about the thermal.
Yeah, the thermal, yeah.
Oh, no, yeah. I actually talked to her and him.
Pat.
Very nice people. Yeah, that's exciting. I have some questions about it. There's parts of it that don't make any sense, like why are the eyes cold on the thermal imaging? Most of the time, the eyes are hot. But
no, that's not necessarily.
It's weird.
I mean,
it was just weird, is what I'm saying.
It
was odd, but yeah, to me that's super exciting. And when you slow it down frame by frame and you actually sit there and look at it, I mean,
the thing of it is, no one was able to do what we were able to do on those stills. Even Doug Hychak from Monster Quest couldn't even take the film and slow it down and clean it up like we were able to. And I mean, you can see the images perfect. When we ran them through the filters and was able to stabilize the film, you can see this thing holding that child up, that young dog man, where it brought its knees up. It's like you have a child in front of you and you pick the child up by the arms or under the arms. What's that child going to do? It's automatically going to bring its legs up,
right. Yeah.
And that's what this thing did. And then we had an artist rendition of what that looks like. And that's what that color artwork is.
Yeah.
I
did see that. I thought you were talking about I saw some kind of AI thing where a dog man was holding the baby and you said something about, I was like, I was mixed.
No, that AI picture, it's not an AI picture. That picture wasn't done through AI. It was done through someone actually doing the artwork on it.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that was exciting. I mean, I immediately reached out to them and was trying to talk to them. To me, that's some of the best, physical evidence that's
from LBL, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that
And I'll
that
send you
really
some
got
of
me
those
going.
pictures too.
That's cool. We'll drop those in there too. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was good. And the LBL, there's a lot of good places to go. I know that there's still a lot of activity down in that area, and people still doing expeditions down there. And I know that they're high up, and we've got a lot of them in Texas and Oklahoma, and I don't. I mean, I honestly think that they're everywhere. They're all over. They're a nationwide phenomenon, and there's even dogman type creatures down in Mexico and South America. So it's
It's where, I mean, we've talked to a lot of the Border Patrol guys that were talking about um, uh, dogman along the border where they're finding people killed and eaten,
yeah.
and they see them, they know they're there, you know,
Hmm.
and stuff. I mean, one of the guys I worked with at a job uh, before he was even a Border Patrol agent. And he was, when now he's Border Patrol, and he was telling me all this crazy stuff. He says, "Man, these things are coming in from Mexico, and they're down in Texas, and we know that they're there. We know, what areas that they're in, and they're finding bodies and stuff of these people coming in from Mexico
Yeah.
that are getting killed and eaten." He said it's freaking crazy, and it's just like it's all hush hush quiet stuff,
Yeah.
and things.
I've heard those stories too. It's kind of
Yeah,
disturbing. So,
I mean,
but
yeah.
I'm sorry.
three meals, go for it.
Jody, if I could just ask you one more question, and then
Mhm.
I'll leave it to Brian. I know I've been yapping a lot, but I just enjoyed the opportunity to pick your brain here.
Yeah.
A little random, but I want to ask this because me and another member of Red Dirt have recently been researching frequencies, and we've
Mhm.
kind of been toying with this idea of eliciting activity through frequencies. Kind of looking to, like we were talking about earlier, the possible paranormal connection there. Is that something you've done at all in your research by any chance? Is toying or experimenting with different frequencies, playing certain frequencies in areas and hotspots?
We've tried that. We thought about that. Well, another thing that we do is there's a wolf sanctuary by my house. Okay, that I know the people there, and I was able to get like wolf urine, male and female, hair, samples and stuff like that to make for thermo chips and stuff to put out, thinking that we that might bring in. It's like some of the wolf urine that we got was when they're in heat. Okay, so we were using some of that stuff in thermo chips, and then spraying it around certain areas, um, hoping that that would drag a big or a dog man in and so forth. And really haven't had a lot of luck with that,
Mhm.
there. But even I think with the frequencies, because you're dealing with a canine, that it may, we're thinking, well, maybe this is pushing it away, or we're hurting
Yeah.
it. If we hurting it, it's going to come after us. It's
Right.
it's going to hurt us. So we stopped that, but we thought maybe that would work. But like you said, you're dealing with the canine that has very sensitive hearing,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was a thought. I mean, we're trying everything we can possibly think of. And like you say, even with wolf hair, from male or female, and you're putting it somewhere where hopefully it could. I mean, because the wolf hair, you could smell it. I mean, it's got its musk smell to it. Okay, um,
Mhm.
and stuff. So you think that would carry, and you know, either they don't think it's a predator, or and that's why we use a lot of the female stuff, because we're thinking that if we can get if it can sense a female that's in heat, that would drag it
Mhm.
in. You know,
Right.
so I mean, we try everything we possibly can.
Mm. Well, that's science. You
Yeah,
table a hypothesis, you test and do what you can to test for
yeah,
that, and
Yeah.
Go from there.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Cook, we've had you on here quite a long time.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time, and
Appreciate it.
of course, there's always more questions that need to be asked, but if we do that, then we'll probably have to try to twist your arm to come back on at a later date. So
I got some good stuff. I mean, it's like, when we got deployed to Iraq and stuff, we were in Kuwait first.
Mhm.
Okay, we had to go in like to Kuwait City to get our equipment that was coming in through the port there, and there's a sea serpent that lives in Kuwait Harbor. Okay, it's like a plesiosaur, and people see it and feed it. We saw it when we were there. And that, which was real weird, because everybody talked about it, about the monster in the lake there, and people throw food to it, and you can see it. Like I said, we went and saw it. It was like, seriously, it was like a plesiosaur.
When were you in Kuwait or Iraq?
Yeah, I was there as part of the invasion force in 2003.
I was there in 2004.
Yeah. I was in
Diamondback up north.
Yeah. I spent most of my time in Balad and Anaconda.
Oh,
yeah. I got wounded in Basra. So yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was fun. Kuwait was beautiful. I loved Kuwait. Camp Wolf.
I did convoys in Kuwait or in Iraq. I mean,
yeah, we did
in
too.
Iraq was beautiful. It was sometimes I held up and we had to drive during the daytime, and along the Tigris and Euphrates River, you could see off in the distance irrigation pivots and John Deere tractors and crops everywhere. It's pretty cool.
I got baptized in the Euphrates. I mean, I'm Catholic, but they baptized us again in the Euphrates, and then we end up going to Babylon.
The hospital to get that skin rash taken care of, or
no, we would go to Babylon and see Muhammad's house there, and people was like taking pieces of the house there and stuff like that, and they wouldn't even let the Pope go there, man. It was so ridiculous, but even Iraq had some really, I've seen some strange, kind of stuff there, in Iraq. I think it was more extraterrestrial because I would see like these blue rings just like fly in the sky over there. And I know a lot of the choppers had blue and red rings, but there's always, when you saw them fly at night and stuff, they always had like a chop between them. So you knew it was a chopper, a bird flying, but these were just like completely different, and stuff. So yeah, it was weird. But like I said, the only cryptid thing I've ever seen over there was in Kuwait, which was this sea serpent that was in the water over there. Yeah,
that's enough.
yeah.
Oh wow.
So
well, like I said, we appreciate your time. We appreciate all your input.
Appreciate it.
And we are very glad that the North American Dogman Project is out there doing work. And like I said, if there's anything we can ever do, our files are public. You're more than welcome to use them for whatever. It ain't much, but we've got like 80 Dogman case files. So I know it's a drop in the bucket.
We'll share a lot of that stuff. I mean, like I said, we'll share some of the stuff. I mean, if I get stuff in your area, I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
We get other stuff. We get a lot of Bigfoot stuff. People calling in, on the Bigfoot stuff.
Yeah.
So if we get something in your area, I'll definitely pass it on to you.
You can't do Dogman work without getting some Bigfoot stuff.
Stuff in there and other cryptids. We get a lot of it. Trust me. We get a lot of it.
A lot of weird stuff out there.
Yep.
So.
Hey,
all right, Chief.
Hey, Joedy, real quick. How far away are you from Cincinnati, just south the Kentucky border. Are you in that general area?
I'm in Cincinnati, Kentucky. Is like from if I walk out of my house, my backyard, there's Route 50, River Road, and there's the Ohio River, and Covington's right there.
The what?
Covington.
Oh, Covington.
Yeah, Newport.
All right. Well, I am in that area sometimes.
Okay.
Driving through, going back to Buffalo where I grew up.
Okay.
And you ever eat at Knotty Pine on the Bayou?
No, never heard of it.
It's a delicious, it's a good restaurant. I'll give you a holler next time I'm through there.
Yeah, let me know. Yeah, make sure you give me heads up and stuff. So, yeah, that'd be great. Is it in Kentucky?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like an arm's length over from Ohio into Kentucky. It's right there on the border.
Okay. Yeah.
All right,
Like
man.
I said, it's 15 minutes away from me to get on.
Sounds good.
Take the ferry over. So yeah, it's all right there. Yeah.
Did you see old Coleman giving the plug? It's like, it's our show, Coleman. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys.
I was scratching my foot.
All right. You guys have a good one. Keep in touch.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Guys.
Take care, buddy. All right. Bye.